Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thanks very much for joining us today. Just a few housekeeping rules while more people are trickling in. So everyone is on mute by default. You're on mute by default, and everyone is invisible. So no need to be shy. You can ask questions at any time. Use the Q&A in the chat to ask questions at any time. If I don't see them, Jamie's busy helping me, and she'll make sure the questions are flagged. Show us what you think. Reactions and emoji reactions are welcome. In fact, even encouraged. So be reactive. Use your workbooks. We're going to be sharing a workbook with you, which is probably in the chat already. Use those workbooks, make a copy of them, and then, if you feel brave, share your answers. So let's get cracking. My name is Alex. For those of you who have not met me yet, I've had about 26 years of experience, going on 27 years of experience. Time goes fast, as I'm sure many of you also feel. I've had 26 years of experience in helping people achieve financial freedom. And within our group, WealthBit works with employers who want to take control of people, of their staff's financial well-being, and they want to take it very seriously. Not as a nice to have, but actually as a strategic lever within the business. Some of you were at the January work session on financial stress and retention, and today is really an extension of that. It builds on that from a completely different angle. So today is all about money, and importantly, money that you're already paying, money that you're probably not getting back, and whether that same money could be used to solve one of your most expensive workforce problems. So we're going to be talking about that right at the end of the presentation. If there's time, I'll get into what our financial freedom program looks like if there's time. If there's not time, we can arrange a separate session, or just feel free to reach out to us. Now, because the workplace skills program deadline is just a few weeks away, this is aimed to be useful right now. So let's get right into it. And before I show you any numbers, I want to ask you something. When you last submitted that WSP, that workplace skills program, did it feel more like a genuine strategy for your people, or was it really mostly paperwork? So you can either use a QR code here, or just click on the link in the chat, the Menti chat, and we'll hop across the Menti in a second. All right, so wow, results are trickling in. 4 people, 3 or 4 have responded. So 4 or 4 have responded. So far, everyone feels this many paperwork. So most of us are feeling like black cats and not strategic military cats right now. And that's interesting. It's very interesting. And it sort of resonates with us paying the levy, filling in the forms, moving on, and that's the norm. But there's actually a number behind the habit that most companies have never actually looked at. And what I'm going to do is go into the tool. So you can hop into the tool on your side, or just feel free to track on my side. And what I'd like to use is a simple example. An example of 100 employees with a 15 million rand annual payroll, and they do submit their WSP. So the answer there is yes. So the result is that they claim back their mandatory grant, but they've never applied for discretionary funding. So this company would pay 150,000 rand in SDL every single year. We're all obliged to pay 1% of our payroll into SDL. And this is how it gets used. So of that 150,000 rand, 30% or 45,000 goes into a national skills fund. That money is gone. It's not recoverable. So write that off. Then there's a QCTO levy that's applied of 0.5%. So that's 750 rand, also gone. Write it off. But then there's this mandatory grant. And this is yours as long as you submit by the 30th of April your WSP. So together with that, you can also claim triple B, double E points. The amount that's left is this discretionary grant pool of 49.5%. And it's a significant number. It's a significant number that most people are leaving on the table. They're not getting back. You multiply this by 5 years, and that's 370,000. Now, for a company with 500 people, multiply that by 5, we're talking millions. And that's just money. That's just the money side. The cost side is wildly different. So how do you claim back more of this SDL? Let's hop back to the presentation. So to recover more of your SDL, there are three easy steps. First of all, submit your WSP and your ATR, your annual training report, by the 30th of April. So this protects your mandatory grant as well as up to 25 points, triple B, double E points. Miss it, and you could drop 2 levels on your scorecard, and you certainly won't get your mandatory grant back. This is the floor. Without it, nothing else is possible. So just make sure you do that. Second of all, apply for the discretionary grants. That 49.5% is competitive. It's not guaranteed, and success rates vary by SETA. Success rates typically between 20 and 50%. But if you never apply, the answer is always 0. And then third, structure your skills spend smartly. And this is where it gets really interesting, because what counts as skills development spend is much broader than most companies realize. And we'll come back to that in a few minutes. But first, I want to show you why recovering more of this money matters so much, because there is a cost to sitting in your business right now that dwarfs the 74,000. Makes this 74,000 seem like pocket change, like petty cash. And this is the problem that no one is budgeting for. And I'd like to relate a story to you where I work with an HR director at a mid-sized company, and they've got around 120 people. And she told me something last year that really stuck with me. And it was all about absenteeism. She said, we don't have an absenteeism problem. Our people show up. And the reality is she was right. There was no absenteeism problem because the absent rates were below average. Something else is happening though. And this is with regards to deadlines, performance on the sales team, client complaints. All of these things were getting worse. They're deteriorating, as well as some of their best people were leaving. So 3 of their best people left within 6 months. So the problem wasn't an absenteeism problem. It was actually a presenteeism problem. The people were there, they just weren't fully there. And this is reflected in these iceberg numbers, where they're two big costs that companies face, but they never ever see on the income statement. And the first is absenteeism. Absenteeism is almost like the tip of the iceberg. This number you see because you can measure it. And now globally, the absenteeism rate is about 1.5%. For South Africa, we tend towards between 3.5% and 6%. And that alone, in South African terms, represents about 20 billion. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real cost is sitting below the water. And that is presenteeism. People who are at their desks, logged in, but they're running at half capacity. And this is 7 times more costly. So for South Africa, the cost is around 235 billion rand per year, which is about 4% of our GDP. And until now, it doesn't show up in a single management dashboard until now. So let's, before we move on, let's hop across to another mentee. Unfortunately, no more cats. We're all catted out. But in your experience, what's the single biggest driver of disengagement within your teams? So what's the single biggest driver of disengagement within your teams? I think I'm going to have to switch the mentee and move across. Okay. So the word stress seems to be coming up quite a bit. Oh, geez, stress. I'm worried that that the first answer seeded everyone's mind. Anxiety, something else. Yes, anxiety. I see a lot of. We always have one more person, but this is exactly it. Stress within the workplace, we see causes disengagement. Anxiety, very closely related to stress, causes massive disengagement as well. And I think the reason for that is probably very nicely summarized with a story we all know very, very well. And this is a story about Sarah. Sarah is someone that we can probably relate to. Many of us are a Sarah in many ways. Sarah's a marketing manager. She earns a good salary, but she faces financial hurdles that I'm sure resonate with many of us. So a salary arrives, and as soon as the salary arrives, bills are paid, and nothing is really left over for savings or for emergencies. And then she's overwhelmed by money. Budgeting seems tough. Financial decisions are confusing, sometimes overwhelming. And then these unexpected expenses happen. Car repairs, medical bills, emergencies, and they keep on disrupting her financial plans. I had one of these months last year, November. So my son, he chipped his tooth, so he had to go to the dentist and get his tooth sorted out. Then Natalie went over a pothole. I mean, we're in Johannesburg, so there's still quite a few of them. I think it's going to change soon. I'm quite optimistic. But she went over a pothole, tire needed replacing. My son then chewed on a sucker, broke his tooth off again. We had to go back to the dentist. So it was one of those months where just everything went wrong. And I'm sure we've all had those months. But the result is that Sarah's now living in financial anxiety. She's uncertain about her financial future, uncertain about her financial future in particular. And this then relates to what we see happening within the actual data, because Sarah's not alone. Financial stress is one of the biggest drivers that almost no one is addressing at organizational level. PwC's global research says that over 60% of employees experience it regularly. And we did a survey ourselves of over 100 South African people. We found a very similar pattern where 4 in 5 regularly worry about money. Almost 60% say it distracts them at work, and over 80% say that their energy and motivation is diminished. And here's the one I want to sit with you, is that across multiple studies, around 85% of employees said that if their employer helped them with financial stress, they would be more productive. So that's people telling us that that's where the leverage is. So the leverage is in helping them with their finances. So now let's put a number to it. Let's hop back to the tool. Let's find out what this financial stress is likely costing you. So let's go to the next tab. So we're on SDL recovery. We're going to go to absenteeism costs. So if you're tracking on your own spreadsheet, and I see at the top right, we've got an anonymous cheetah and an anonymous kiwi. So we've got some people with us. And I'm going to go to the top. So this is the same company, 100 employees, 15 million payroll. And we're going to use the South African benchmark of 4.5% absenteeism and 7.5% presenteeism, and then 8% of stress-driven attrition. And once those numbers are in, we can flip down here and we can see what the total annual hidden cost is. 3.6 million rand a year for 100 people. And the problem is we're not seeing this 3.6 million on any income statement, any balance sheet. It doesn't exist. It's just happening every single year. And here you can see the breakdown of it. Absenteeism is a whopping 675,000. Presenteeism, very conservative at 1.1 million. That's very conservative. And then stress-driven attrition at 1.8 million. In total, 3.6 million. That's 24% of this company's payroll. It's a big number. This is, of course, back of the napkin math, but we're also dealing with averages. So in many companies, the realities are way worse than what's put into any board pack, and certainly way worse than this. Most companies don't budget or plan for it. And who is dealing with repercussions? Well, it's usually our people teams. These are the people who are expected to fix the problem that happened upstream, and ideally without any budget increase. So the reality is it's being tried to, people have tried to address it, but we see a lot of these programs that are trying to address it that fail. And they fail for very, very predictable reasons. The first reason is this once-off support, where there's episodic report. So either we have an EAP or we run a wellness week type approach. Now EAPs can be genuinely helpful for acute issues, But the core limitation is that financial stress behaves like a chronic illness. It needs repetition, systems, not just a place to talk where things have already sort of exploded. The second is no systems. And this is where information is not the same as capability. Most people already know the obvious financial advice, spend less, save more, avoid debt. The gap isn't in knowing, the gap is in building a system that people can actually run in real life. So if your approach ends with, we gave them information, you're unlikely to see real behavioral change. The third is no measurement. If you can't measure change, you cannot manage it. You also can't make a strong internal case for investment. And this is where your leadership often probably loses appetite because you can't tell if anything is actually working. Engagement rates with these EAPs, that's not saying that something's working. Unless you see your people's financial health measurably change, you can't actually say it's working. And the fourth is a one-size-fits-all approach. Your team is not one person. If you run one generic tactic without the chance to pick up what's relevant, it'll probably be ignored by most people. And uptake will probably be driven by the already motivated. And then you conclude, well, people don't care. When in reality, the tactic didn't meet them where they were. So a properly structured approach, and this is what we do with employers, addresses this. So even if you have the relevant EAPs and benefits, most leaders get stuck on the problem that it's not being utilized enough. And typically globally, EAP utilization rates are around 2%. In South Africa, they're around 9%. But what is utilization? Unless it's making a meaningful difference to your people, it doesn't much matter. So here are the three layers that we think really matter. The first one is diagnose for visibility. This is about knowing what you're actually dealing with. And what good looks like here is where people understand the strengths, gaps, and overlaps of their existing financial setup holistically. Most providers just care about specific products. So if you've got someone in your organization that's just selling products, it's probably not the right person. People have clarity on the next steps and not just all the things people can do to improve one's finances. That's overwhelming. Layer 2 is about stabilization. This is about reducing the immediate pressure. This is where you focus on all the things that create panic cycles, the moments where people feel that they're one surprise away from just exploding. This layer is not about making people wealthy. It's about helping them stop the bleeding. They regain a sense of control. They remove the triggers that push them into avoidance. So some good examples of stabilization interventions are one-on-one coaching, where or handing over to relevant specialists, or practical action-based support. And to be clear, if all you do is stabilize, you'll probably get temporary relief, but you haven't yet changed the underlying system, and the stress usually comes back. And that's why the third layer is so important. This has to do with systems. This is where behavior actually changes. So you stop treating money like a once-off problem, you start treating it like a routine. The outcome is not they listen to talk, it is they run a repeatable set of money habits and check-ins, and that keeps them out of a crisis. This is where your workforce becomes so much more powerful. Retention starts going up, churn down. People start becoming more present. So this is the layer that protects you as a business in the long run. So here, capability looks like ongoing visibility of their financial situation. Can you measure what the financial situation of your anonymized staff cohort looks like? Simple systems that people can actually stick to, tools that give feedback, not just advice, and then light accountability and repetition, just enough structure that it becomes normal to deal with their finances regularly. So I'll give you an example of what this looks like in practice. Let's hop back to the tools. Remember a few minutes ago, we looked at that number that's sitting on the table of 74,000 Rand. That hasn't been claimed, just lying there. And then we also looked at the hidden cost of 3.6 million. So the question is obvious. Can you use one to fix the other? So let's go back to the tool. And we're going to go into the next tab, which is can SDL fund the fix? So we're dealing with the same company. Now this is really the part that matters. So I can tell you that financial stress is a problem, and I can show you the data, but if you can't see the numbers side by side in your context with your headcount, it all stays theoretical. So let's make it concrete. And this tab does something very simple. It takes the SDL numbers we just looked at and puts them against the cost of actually addressing financial stress in your workplace. So for this 100-person company, a structured financial wellness program that we're running at WealthBit runs at 69 Rand per person per month. For larger companies, the cost goes down. So that's 82,000 a year. It's not nothing, but remember what we've compared it to. What we're comparing it to is this big number of 3.6 million. Now, this company's mandatory grant is 30,000, right? So we're already recovering 30,000 Rand there. And the realistic discretionary recovery, even at a conservative 30% success rate, adds another 22,000. It's over there. So the 22,000, we'll assume we get back from the discretionary grant. So the actual out-of-pocket expense to this company for this program would be 30,500 Rand. So once again, it's not nothing, but compared to the cost of what we're spending on an unseen basis because of presenteeism and absenteeism, it's a very, very small number. So let's look at whether this actually makes sense. If we are able to achieve within our businesses, even a 10% reduction, in these hidden costs that we know are happening, bearing in mind this 3.6 million is pretty conservative. That's still 360,000 Rand a year. The return on that investment is 11.8 times. It is enormous. 11.8 times. So for every Rand the company spends net of SDL, they get nearly 12 Rands in reduced absenteeism, presenteeism, and attrition. And again, that's a very, very conservative scenario. So all of this is summarized in a beautiful dashboard. And this is where everything sort of comes together. And most people have never seen everything in one place like this. And I'm going to draw your attention to 4 numbers. The first number is the top left, the 74,000 of SDL. This is the number that you're not recovering right now. The top right over here, this 3.6 million, this is the cost that's hidden within your business that no one's budgeting for at the moment. The bottom left is the actual cost, the actual out-of-pocket cost net of SDL. And the bottom right is, does the maths work? Is this number big enough for you to actually take notice of it? 11.8 times. If I could invest in 11.8 times multiple, I would do so every day of the week. So I think it makes sense. That's a big number. Right. What I want to do is take a look at what actually works today. So this is where most people oversell it. Can you fund the financial wellness program through SETA discretionary grants directly? For most companies and most SETAs, not yet. The bulk of discretionary funding goes towards pivotal programs, learnerships, and qualifications on the NQF. But the maths we just looked at doesn't depend on just getting a grant. It works because of 3 things that are already available. Firstly, the BBBEE skills development spend. The BE codes include consumer education as a recognized category of skills development spend. Financial literacy falls under that. So if you run a structured financial wellness program with measurable learning outcomes, that spend counts towards your skills development target. And skills development is worth up to 25 points on the generic scorecard. That's not a minor technicality, it's a meaningful lever. Second of all, how you allocate your existing spend. So even if you're not applying for discretionary grants, you're spending money on training. And the question is whether you're directing any of that to the root cause of your productivity losses. Most companies aren't. And it's not because they've decided against it. It's just because it hasn't occurred to them that financial wellness is a legitimate skills development investment. Thirdly, the compliance angle. So you have to build your WSP anyway. This year, when you're doing it, ask one question. Is any of this aimed at the biggest strain on my workforce? Now, on the evolving On the evolving side, the QSTO is changing how workforce programs get accredited. Some SETAs are already funding non-purposeful programs with up to 20% of discretionary grants. So the landscape's opening. I'm not going to promise you anything that's not confirmed, but what I will say is that you don't need a SETA grant to justify addressing a 3.6 million rand problem when the net cost is 30,000. The trouble is that it's not on the income statement. So use the tool to unlock what you're actually spending, identify what you're actually spending on this cost. We're at the moment actively working on accreditation pathways for financial wellness, but I'm not going to tell you every SETA will fund this tomorrow. Some of them will be faster than others. What I will say is that even without the discretionary grant, the BBBEE value alone, combined with the productivity gains, does make sense. So some EAPs are trying to address this, but we see it as a very generic approach, and we haven't seen any that have been successful. So if you remember our January session, we covered the 3 layers about a useful program. And this is about diagnosing, stabilizing, and building ongoing operational and measurable impacts. And what I'd like to close with is these 3 steps that we strongly suggest you take before the 30th of April. The first one is submit your WSP and your ATR. This is the non-negotiable part. It's a door that opens everything else. Just get your mandatory grant and open up the door to everything else that follows. It also protects your BBBEE points. So if you're behind, start today. Your SETA has support for companies that need help with submissions. Don't leave this until the last week of April. Oh, sorry about that. So that part's non-negotiable. Second of all, run this tool with your real numbers. So take 15 minutes, plug in your actual payroll, employee count, and then the best estimate of absenteeism. If you don't know your absenteeism rates, that's a finding in itself and a reason to measure it. Once you have the number, book 20 minutes with whoever controls the budget in your organization and show them the dashboard. And just let the numbers do the talking. They speak for themselves. And then the third step is ask one question about your skills plan. Look at what you budgeted for skills development, and is any of it directed to the biggest strain on your workforce? If your people are financially stressed, and statistically most of them are, and your skills plan is entirely technical training, there's a disconnect. You don't need to overhaul anything, but directing even a portion of your spend towards a structured financial wellness, which accounts for BBBEE, starts closing the gap towards what you're paying for and what you're actually getting. So you've now got everything. You've got all the tools. You've got SDL and the absenteeism audit tool. Make a copy, get your own version. We'll also dump the other 2 tools, which many people have found very useful, and that's the financial stress survey, where you can get a custom anonymous link for your team. We then analyze the financial stress within your business and share a report with you at no cost. And then we also have the financial health quiz. This is where individuals can individually assess where they stand financially and get a personalized breakdown themselves. And if you would like to explore what a structured financial wellness program looks like within your skills development framework, please reach out to Barry at wealthbit.co. But the tools are yours. The tools are all yours, and the purpose of today was to give you something useful, not to sell you something. So I'm going to close with this, is that your people are showing up stress. Their stress is showing up in your numbers, even if you can't see it. And you're already paying into a system that was designed to develop your workforce. And the question is whether those 2 things are ever going to meet, whether they're going to marry. So you've got 4 weeks to start, on this WSP. If you haven't started already, it'd be great to start straight away. So we are nicely ahead of schedule, which is what I was hoping for, because I I'd love to show you what this program looks like, but first, let's hop into questions. Let's see if there are any. Okay, there are a couple of, there's one question so far, and the question is, we're small, 20 people, does this program scale down? So the answer is yes. So even on a 20-person business, assuming you're probably paying about 2 million rand a year in payroll, so that results in 20,000 per year in SDL. And over 5 years, that's 100,000 rand. So the absenteeism and presenteeism is often worse in smaller companies, where if one person's off, it has a really big impact on the overall productivity of the business. So the program rate is 69 rand per person per month for companies up to 500 people, and there it starts scaling down. See, there's another question: can financial wellness qualify for SETA discretionary grants? And the answer is not. It's not straightforwardly yes for most SETAs today. The reliable path is a triple BEE structured financial literacy as a consumer education, which counts towards your skills development spend. Discretionary is SETA dependent and very much evolving with the QCTO transition. Our person that's lobbying for this at the moment is actually meeting with the QCTO today. So we're hoping for good news after her engagement. So that is. I'm just going to see if any more questions have been popped in here. Okay, I don't see any more questions. Jamie, have I missed any?
Alex, there's one more. Where do the absenteeism benchmarks come from? Can I trust them?
Oh, okay, right. Yeah. So they come for that number of 3.5 to 6% comes from CTS time and as well as industry surveys. And then presenteeism is harder to measure directly, and that's why the tool lets you adjust the rate. But if anything, our default of 7.5% is very conservative. And we've got a lot of these numbers from that PwC survey that's done on an annual basis as well. So it's yeah, they're fairly conservative numbers. What I'm really excited to do is actually just hop into showing you what the program looks like. So, and when we show people the program, we often get the response, "I've never seen anything like this." So let me show it to you in 5 minutes max. So the first part are the workshops, and our workshops are very, very simple to book. So there's a booking engine here, and anyone can go in and they can click on the workshop that resonates with them, or they can click on all of them. So the one that's coming up, which is amazing, I've seen the workbook that's been designed for it. It really is awesome. It's on habits, systems, and clever workarounds that'll save you money this year. I mean, the one example that was given was just a cup of coffee. And we all love our cup of coffee, but if we just had to use our coffee we make at home or use the coffee that's available at the company we work at and not spend that 60 Rand every single day, we'll save ourselves about 15,000 Rand a year. It's a bizarre amount of money. Anyway, that's going to be an amazing workshop, but this just rolls on. We talk about debt, we talk about how to teach kids money skills, big life changes that are coming up. And then towards the end of the year, we start talking about January, how you start planning for January earlier in the year. So that's the workshop. And the workshop all has workbooks, much like we've given you today, but it's for individuals. Then, and this is really the gold within the program, is the coaching and the personal dashboard. The coaching, the personal dashboard, I'll show you what it actually looks like. It's like this. So everyone that has a coaching session gets a dashboard, and after they have their dashboard, they understand their financial setup. So everyone gets entitled to 2 coaching sessions, and the first coaching session is really about getting the person set up complete. And here they can see what how their money tracks over time. They capture everything from assets to cash flow events. So this person wants to spend money on holidays, universities. We capture their budgets. We look at their liabilities, and everything gets captured within a new note, and it's a financial freedom template note. So they have a coaching session, and the coaching session follows a very structured approach. But for the first time, a person actually understands their financial setup. And very importantly, they also know what their number needs to be. Because the question's often, what is my number? Now they know what their number is. The second coaching session, the coach will hit this new button, which says new scenario. And in this new scenario, the individual, the person being coached, as well as the coach, can test various scenarios to see what impact the various scenarios would have. So I'm just going to show you one example, one very quick example, which costs a person no extra money. It's just about getting something called their asset allocation correct. So you can see this person's asset allocation has domestic bonds and domestic cash. Very heavy in domestic bonds and domestic cash, but they're only 47 years old. So they're being really conservative, but they're still very young. Now, I'm calling that young. I'm 47, so I'm calling that young. So if we had to see where that's actually sitting, we can see it's sitting in their provident fund. So they're probably just in the wrong portfolio in their provident fund. And by changing just this one number and to have a more appropriate asset allocation, it changes their entire future without costing them any more money. It's just about a coaching session that says, rather than be that conservative, invest more appropriately, and your financial situation changes because your asset allocation changes. So now they've got some money in domestic equity, more money in offshore equity, and still a fair amount in invested cash and domestic bonds. But instead of ending on 3.2 million at the age of 65, this person is going to end on 4.4 million at 65, right? And that's in present day terms. Future day terms, it's a difference between 9.4 million and 12.5 million. So for the first time, a person can actually see their entire financial setup. Then comes the part that really matters to employers. And I'm going to stop sharing for a second, just so I don't share any confidential information. And I'm going to hop across to an example of a company dashboard. And the company dashboard is really a summary of everyone in the business's financial setup. So it's obviously on an anonymized basis because we don't want to be disclosing any person's personal information. Share again. There we go. Should be coming through. So this is an example of a company dashboard. And at the top right, you can see the most important figure, which is the average financial health score of your organization. And you can see this company started at an average of 28% financial health, and over time, they've gone up to a 32% financial health. You can see how the engagement of the program is at all levels: coaching, workshops, and then we have a mobile application as well. And then what people are thinking about the program. Are they loving it or are they hating it? And then very importantly, you can see how on a sand chart basis, how this changes over time. the sand chart will always add up to 100%. But then you can see when people join the program, how the things change over time. And you can see what portion of your workforce is in the green, the amber, and the red. Now, for really large companies, often they start different cohorts at different times. So they'll start, a company with a few thousand people might start with a cohort of 500 people and just offer it to those people initially and then roll it on to the rest of their workforce. So if that's your intention, we can start in a very structured approach. And then you can start seeing where your money is actually going, where your staff's money is actually going, broken down between debt, other expenses, investing, and then there's some money that's unaccounted for. And after we understand that, we can get a good handle on where the problem areas are within your organization. So do you need to work on spending or investing or debt levels? And then you can see how people are investing over time, where they're investing. Now, for most businesses that have a provident fund, that is represents most people's total investment. Very few people have anything outside of the provident fund. So this is a fairly rare situation where we see the spider graph is equally distributed like that. We then look at the workshop ratings, coaching ratings, app ratings, and you can go into all of this detail, and then you can see what areas of the program are being utilized and which aren't. So all of this is available to you as the people team or within your management team, whoever you'd like to give access to. And that is the program in a nutshell. Well, it's a really exciting space to be in. I'm going to wrap up there because we are just about at 45 minutes, which I know what most people have budgeted on. Are they just checking if there are any more questions that have come in, or if anyone would like to raise or comment on anything? All right. I'm going to call it there. It's been a pleasure being with everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time. And yeah, spread the word. Get your WSPs in before the end of April. I think that's the most important thing. And then make maximum use of everything that you can get back. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers.